Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really immersing ourselves in the world of an artist who, well, she operates entirely on her own terms.
Completely. Blurring the lines between what classical composition, sprawling literary fiction, and this really experimental folk music.
Joanna Newsom, the voice, the harpist, the wizard of these incredibly long narrative songs.
That's her.
So our mission for this deep dive is, I think, pretty crucial. We're not just summarizing her career, you know.
Oh, not at all. We need to synthesize the information, really try to explore this central paradox about her.
Exactly. How did an artist defined by such, like, intensely complex, highly intellectual music?
Right, coming from this very strict, almost media-free classical background.
How did she become so well integrated into mainstream American culture? You know, collaborating with hip-hop icons, starring in Paul Thomas Anderson films.
And marrying a huge mainstream comedian. It's quite the journey.
It really is. So let's start with the basics, the vital statistics that kind of frame this unique path. Joanna Newsom, born January 18, 1982, Grass Valley, California.
Okay.
Her main occupations listed are singer-songwriter and actress. Her music, well, it defies easy categorization, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. You've got progressive folk, chamber folk, baroque pop, indie folk. It's a mix, all centered around her signature instrument, the harp. She's got 4 key studio albums. The Milk-Eyed Mender from 2004, Yawns in 2006, Have One on Me in 2010, and then Divers in 2015.
A really solid body of work there.
And yes, the connection we mentioned since 2013, married to comedian and actor Andy Samberg. That whole high art, low art thing isn't just like a fun fact.
No, it feels central, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially to her more recent career. It's kind of the defining theme we need to unpack.
Definitely.
And to really get into that paradox, you have to start right at the beginning. The source, that highly controlled, almost utopian environment of her childhood. Nevada City, California.
Right. Her parents, both doctors, described as progressive-minded professionals.
And kind of idealists. That idealism wasn't just theoretical. It created this really specific media blackout. Yeah, the sources detail that so clearly. It's fascinating. She was basically not allowed to watch television or listen to the radio.
Think about that. Growing up in the 80s and 90s in the U.S. without TV or radio.
It's almost unimaginable now. Her parents were hoping to protect us from bad influences like violent movies or stupid stuff.
So they created this huge void where pop culture usually sits for a kid.
And when you take away that constant stream of, you know, easily digestible stuff, you're almost forcing the child to build their own world inside.
Exactly. Develop complex narratives, internal rhythms, instead of just reacting to whatever's on TV.
Right. But the house wasn't silent, was it?
No, far from it. It was filled with music, but it was performed music, live music in the home, not mass-produced stuff piped in. Her father played guitar.
Okay.
And her mother was a classically trained pianist, but also played things like the hammered dulcimer, the auto harp, even conga drums.
Wow, quite a range.
So she was steeped in this foundation of multi-instrumentalism, classical structure from day one, but totally shielded from, like, the standard 3-minute pop song structure.
Which leads directly to the harp, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Such a defining choice. A technically demanding instrument, historically narrative.
And she didn't just stumble into it later. She wanted it early on.
How early?
She asked to learn the harp at 5 years old. 5. It just speaks to this immediate pull towards something unique and challenging.
Did she start right away?
Well, the local instructor actually suggested she start with piano first, get the basics down.
Makes sense.
She did that, but then quickly moved to the harp. And she said she loved it from the first lesson onward.
And it wasn't just a casual hobby.
Oh, no. This is where you see the commitment. She progressed really rapidly from the smaller Celtic harps, the ones with levers,
Right.
to a full-size pedal harp by the 7th grade. A pedal harp.
Okay, explain why that jump is so significant. What's the difference?
Well, it's massive. The Celtic harp is mostly diatonic, limited to certain keys unless you manually flip levers. It's more of a folk instrument in a way.
Okay.
The pedal harp is a full classical orchestral instrument. Huge, incredibly complex. It uses 7-foot pedals that change the pitch of the strings, letting the harpist play in any key, play fully chromatic music instantly.
Wow.
Mastering that by age 12 or 13. That requires serious, demanding classical training, high physical coordination, deep theoretical understanding. It's like the difference between learning a few guitar chords and playing classical concertos.
So it gave her a compositional tool way beyond what most singer-songwriters ever have access to.
Exactly. And that rigor, that discipline, it was mirrored in her education too, especially the focus on narrative and literature.
She went to a Waldorf school, right?
Yeah, and Waldorf schools are known for that intense focus on arts, crafts, and crucially, narrative memorization. She studied theater there.
And learned to memorize and recite long poems.
Long, often classical poems. When you look at her later work, those 15, 17-minute songs on Wise, the 2-hour sprawl of Have One on Me, that Waldorf foundation seems absolutely core.
It's like the scaffolding for her songwriting. She wasn't thinking in 3-minute verses.
No, she was building these epic, multi-part poems and setting them to incredibly complex music.
And she carried that high art focus into college, studying composition and creative writing at Mills College.
Mills College, yeah. And it's worth noting, Mills isn't your standard conservatory. It has this reputation for being avant-garde, experimental.
So choosing Mills suggests she wasn't just looking to perfect classical technique, but maybe break the rules with.
I think so. Blend that training with new experimental forms. She did end up dropping out, though.
Why was that?
Not for lack of ability, it seems. More because she needed to focus entirely on her music, her performance career.
Okay. And her literary influences really underscore this depth, don't they?
Oh, yeah. Vladimir Nabokov, known for that maximalist, intricate, almost Baroque prose.
And Ernest Hemingway.
Famous for the exact opposite. Minimalist, pared down, concise.
So drawing from those two extremes, what does that suggest to you?
It suggests she's aiming for a synthesis, maybe? Maximizing the scope in the language, like Nabokov, but trying to keep an essential clarity of emotion and theme, like Hemingway. It's ambitious.
It really is. Her whole world seems built on this deep, structured, artistic expression. Now, before we get to her professional career, there's one more interesting background detail. That connection to the California establishment.
Ah, right. The Gavin Newsom connection.
She's his second cousin, twice removed.
It's a great bit of trivia, isn't it? But maybe more than a footnote.
How so?
Well, it just reinforces that she comes from this, deeply rooted, professionally and politically established California family, even while she herself was operating way out on the experimental fringes of the music scene.
Another layer to that paradox.
Yeah.
The background of a political legacy family. But her art is just uncompromisingly anti-establishment.
Exactly.
Okay, so that rigorous early life clearly set the stage.
Yeah.
Because her career ascent wasn't exactly slow, was it? It feels like it happened quite suddenly. Driven by the sheer force of her music, she drops out of Mills, embraces the indie world.
Starting with that classic DIY approach. Recorded 2 EPs herself, Walnut Whales and Yarn and Glue, around 2002, 2003.
And these weren't intended as big releases?
No, apparently they were really just meant as personal documents, capturing her early songs. She sold a few burned CD copies at shows.
So how did they get out there?
Purely through the Organic Indie Network. A friend, Adam Klein from the band Golden Shoulders, just happened to pass a CD to Will Oldham, Bonnie Prince Billy, after a local show in Nevada City.
Wow, that's a huge connection. Will Oldham is legendary in that scene.
Immense, and Oldham immediately asked her to tour with him. That's major validation right there.
And crucially, Oldham didn't just keep it to himself.
No, he gave the CD to the owner of Drag City, his own label. Highly respected independent label out of Chicago.
Drag City's perfect for her, isn't it? Their whole thing is supporting these unique, kind of anti-commercial artists.
Totally. They released stuff by Palace Brothers, Smog, Gastro del Sol. I mean, they gave Newsom a home that valued her uniqueness, didn't try to smooth it out for the mainstream.
And that led directly to her debut album, The Milk-Eyed Mender, in 2004.
Which just immediately clicked with the underground music world. It really captured something about that moment, that sort of burgeoning neo-folk scene.
And its impact was serious and lasting. John Morich called it a neo-folk benchmark just a few years later. NME eventually named it the 12th best folk album of all time.
Yeah, it achieved this kind of canonical status within the genre almost instantly, and it sold, too. By 2010, that debut had sold 200,000 copies.
Which really showed there was an audience hungry for music that demanded a bit more from them.
Definitely. And speaking of reach, you see that first surprising mainstream crossover with a song from that album, right? Sprout and the Bean.
Oh, yeah, in the horror film The Strangers in 2008.
Yeah.
That was such a jarring placement.
It really was. Her delicate, really unique sound against this brutal contemporary horror backdrop, it kind of proves that even her early stuff had this versatile, almost uncanny quality that could work outside its expected genre.
But the real move into Well, Epic Territory came with the second album. Y is pronounced E's, right?
That's the one, released in 2006. And this definitely achieved wider exposure, got a Shortlist Music Prize nomination, charted on the Billboard 200. We're not really just talking folk music anymore here.
No, this feels like structured composition.
Structurally wise is just staggering. It's only 5 tracks long.
Only 5.
Yeah, but some of them go for like 17 minutes.
This is where that Waldorf trainee and long-form narrative really comes into full bloom, I think.
It's an album that requires commitment from the listener. You have to sit down, pay attention, follow the journey.
Absolutely. And the defining feature, musically, is those elaborate, almost Baroque orchestrations handled by the legendary Dyke Parks.
How did that collaboration come about? It was actually her then-boyfriend, the musician Bill Callahan, who recommended Parks's iconic 1967 album Song Cycle.
Which is itself a masterpiece of complex, ornate pop orchestration.
Exactly. So Newsom heard that and specifically sought out Parks to arrange her already dense harp compositions. It was a perfect fit, conceptually.
But the production team on Wise is kind of a paradox itself, isn't it?
It really is, and it says so much about Newsom's control over her sound. On one hand, you've got Dyke Parks doing these lush, highly composed classical arrangements.
Maximum complexity.
But then the album was engineered by Steve Albini.
Steve Albini, known for the exact opposite approach, right? That anti-production ethos, recording Nirvana, Pixies, super raw and direct.
Precisely. Minimal interference, valuing the natural sound of the room, rejecting studio gloss.
So why pair those two? Maximalist arrangements recorded with minimalist techniques.
I think it speaks to her wanting absolute artistic purity. She wanted the complex, formal beauty of the arrangements, yes. But she needed them to sound immediate, raw, true to the instruments, not slick or overproduced or sentimental. Albini provided that clarity, that sharpness. It stopped the dense compositions from just turning into mush.
So the result is massive in scope, but still acoustically precise. You hear everything.
Exactly. And the scope was so grand, she actually performed the whole album live in 2008 with full classical ensembles.
Wow. Like who?
The Brooklyn Philharmonic in New York, the Sydney Symphony Orchestra in Australia.
So it wasn't just critics calling it classical. She was literally presenting it as modern chamber music.
Absolutely. Which brings us to the next level of scale. Have One on Me in 2010. This wasn't just long. It was a triple album. In 2010.
Recorded in Tokyo in 2009. Over 2 hours of songs. I mean, in an era where music consumption was getting faster and more fragmented, putting out a 2-hour triple album.
That's a profoundly defiant statement, isn't it? Just pure artistic self-belief and faith that your audience will commit.
Completely. And the critics seemed to recognize that ambition. Ann Powers at the LA Times had a really insightful take. What was that?
She praised its variety, but specifically interpreted how Newsom used the songwriter's default mode, which is love.
Right.
To explore how traditional love, especially for women, can be both the beginning and the end of possibility.
That's powerful. It shifts the focus from just the technical complexity to the meaning, the themes.
Yes, her music isn't just intricate sounds, it's grappling with these huge, literary, often feminine themes across this vast canvas. It really cemented her role not just as a musician, but as a major narrative voice.
And surprisingly, perhaps, the commercial success kept building. It culminated with Divers in 2015.
Her biggest commercial success so far, actually. Peaked at #1 on the Billboard Alternative Albums chart.
#1. Wow.
And notably, Divers' first week's sales actually topped the debut week of Wyvers, which shows her audience didn't just stick around, it grew and solidified.
Even with the demands of the music, what was the concept behind Divers?
Well, the title track apparently evolved from a song she'd performed live, tentatively called The Diver's Wife, described as this detailed love story about pearl hunting.
Pearl hunting.
Right.
That's specific.
Right. A diving bell used to get pearls, a diver separated from his wife. It's classic Newsom. Using these incredibly particular, almost historical narratives to explore universal stuff, time, separation, love, memory.
So if we dig a bit deeper into the technical side, the musical style itself, those official labels highlight the blend, right? Progressive folk, chamber folk, indie folk, Baroque pop.
Yeah, it's never just one thing. And she was heavily linked, especially by journalists back in the early 2000s with that whole freak folk movement.
Ah, yes, freak folk, characterized by eccentricity, experimental sounds, moving away from traditional folk.
But she pushed back against that label pretty strongly, didn't she?
She did. And that says a lot about her need for independence, I think. Even though she was often called one of its most prominent members, she stated very plainly she claims no ties to any particular music scene.
Which makes sense. For someone who puts so much work into classical rigor and formal composition, being lumped under a loose, sometimes kind of dismissive label like freak folk,
It probably felt reductive.
yeah, especially given the complexity she was aiming for. Speaking of which, her early work was really defined by some sophisticated theory, particularly polyrhythms.
Right. Explain polyrhythms again quickly.
Basically, it's when you play two or more independent, conflicting rhythms at the same time. Creates this really complex, sometimes dizzying texture. It's a sign of high-level compositional skill.
But she moved away from that.
She did, quite publicly. After Rai, she said, polyrhythms stopped being fascinating to me and started feeling wanky.
Wanky. That's such a great revealing word choice, like complexity just for the sake of showing off.
Exactly. It suggests she felt the technique was becoming gratuitous, overshadowing the actual substance, the story, the melody, the emotion. It was a conscious shift away from purely mechanical difficulty towards semantic depth.
Which explains why she'd cite influences as diverse as the avant-garde prog rock band Henry Cow.
Who were known for free improvisation and super intellectual, challenging structures.
While also incorporating elements of really simple traditional Appalachian music and its shape note notation.
That range is just radical, isn't it? Avant-garde, prog rock, and basic folk notation. Her sources aren't just wide, they actively conflict sometimes, forcing her into this unique synthesis.
Okay, let's move to probably the most discussed, maybe most polarizing element of her art. The voice itself.
Ah, yes.
The soprano voice. Her delivery, especially early on, definitely drew a lot of commentary.
Critics often called it childlike, which is a loaded term, isn't it? It implies a lack of maturity, maybe even technique.
And Newsom, understandably, expressed real disappointment with that label. She preferred to call her style untrainable.
Untrainable. What's the distinction there?
Well, untrainable suggests something innate, idiosyncratic, an instrument that just resists conforming to standard vocal coaching rather than simply being unsophisticated. It highlights that her voice is fundamentally unique, not easily replicated or slotted into neat categories. What's fascinating, though, is that her voice did change. It physically transformed, forcing an evolution in her sound that critics noticed almost immediately on Have One on Me.
That's right. And this wasn't a stylistic choice, it was medical. In 2009, she developed vocal cord nodules.
A common issue for professional singers, unfortunately.
Yeah, but hers were severe enough that she couldn't speak or sing at all for 2 months, just silence.
Wow.
And the recovery process, plus some subsequent vocal modifications she undertook, it fundamentally changed her physical instrument.
So that richer, maybe deeper tone people heard on her later work wasn't her deciding to sound different, but a direct result of healing and physical changes.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
How was that change received then? Did people see it as her maturing, or did they miss the old sound?
Generally, I think it was seen as a maturation. While that really high-pitched, maybe polarizing quality softened, her ability for complex phrasing, for sustained narrative, that all remained.
So the core Newsomness was still there.
Exactly. It resulted in a voice that was maybe lower, richer, perhaps more traditionally palatable for some folks, but it still had that essential eccentricity and narrative power. It's a really interesting case study in how an artist's sound can be totally redefined by something involuntary, pushing them into new territory.
And looking ahead, despite the, long gaps between albums, it sounds like she is actively working on new stuff.
Definitely. After nearly a decade since Divers, we've got solid proof of new songs being played live. In 2023, she did a surprise opening set for Fleet Foxes.
Oh, right.
And debuted 5 new songs with tentative titles like Bombs Are Whistling, Marie at the Mill, Little Hand, The Air Again, and No Wonder.
5 new songs. That's significant. And then in 2024, during a concert residency, she debuted 2 more originals, Home Economics and Rovensheer. Okay, so that's 7 new songs debuted in about a year. That strongly suggests a 5th studio album must be, well, pretty far along in development, continuing that legacy of complex storytelling, which leads us perfectly into the final and maybe most contradictory piece of her career puzzle. How this artist of such intense internal rigor has so successfully embraced collaborations and roles way outside her initial niche. It confounds that paradox we started with.
Yeah, her collaboration list is surprisingly wide-ranging. It really shows her willingness to just cross artistic boundaries without blinking. Early on, sure, she worked with experimental acts like Nervous Cop, Vetiver.
Right, kind of expected.
And she contributed to the work of the legendary folk revivalist Vashti Bunyan. But then, Things take a sharp turn into mainstream comedy and even hip-hop.
The comedy links are amazing. She provided vocals for the Lonely Island song Rastret,
Which is hilarious.
and appeared in the MGMT music video for kids, playing the mom. Yeah. Here's this artist citing Nabokov, studying polyrhythms, and she's happily playing the mom in a big indie pop video and singing on comedy rap tracks.
It shows a great self-awareness, doesn't it? A playful attitude about her own high art image. Like, she doesn't take that pedestal too seriously.
Totally. And the range just keeps going. She worked with Thao and the Get Down, Stay Down. And maybe most surprisingly, she was a guest composer on the Roots-acclaimed 2010 album How I Got Over.
The Roots, I mean, they're known for their musical sophistication, bridging hip-hop and jazz with real compositional depth. Her contributing there really places her as a serious, sought-after composer, regardless of genre lines.
That flexibility is just astounding. But maybe the biggest pivot was her move into acting, and not just cameos. She took a really substantial, vital role in Paul Thomas Anderson's 2014 film Inherent Vice.
Adapting Thomas Pynchon, no less. She played Sortilus, right, and narrated the whole film.
Yeah, she basically functions as this ethereal guide through Pynchon's notoriously dense, rambling story.
Choosing her voice for that role was just a brilliant move by PTA.
Absolutely. Her unique vocal sound, combined with that innate ability she has to deliver complex, wordy material with clarity and feeling. She was the perfect sonic anchor for that kind of challenging film. Peter Travers at Rolling Stone called her narration gorgeously rendered.
It really confirmed that her instrument, her voice, is incredibly compelling for storytelling, whether it's sung or spoken.
Definitely. And her other acting roles lean right into that comedy world connection we talked about. She showed up as a harpist in Portlandia.
Of course. A steampunk doctor in the Lonely Islands movie Pop Star. Never stop, never stopping. Perfect.
And even had a role as Caroline Saint-Jacques-Renard in the final episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. She's fully embedded in that whole comedy ecosystem now.
Which brings us, naturally, to the personal context that kind of frames this whole paradox. She dated musician Bill Callahan for a few years, right? He sang on Wise.
Yeah, from about 2004 to 2007, he provided guest vocals on that massive track, Only Skin. But then she met Andy Samberg in 2006, actually at one of her concerts.
Well, he was a fan.
Apparently so. And their relationship grew, leading to their marriage in Big Sur back in 2013.
And that pairing is just the perfect symbol of the whole thing, isn't it? The ultimate meeting of high art complexity and literary depth with massive mainstream broadcast comedy success, the intellectual musician marrying the star of SNL and Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
It's such a fascinating merger of sensibilities. And even their real estate choices seem to reflect this blend, the intellectual bohemian meeting Hollywood success. They bought the historic Moorcrest estate in LA's Beechwood Canyon.
Which has serious old Hollywood history, right?
Yeah, owned by silent film star Mary Astor's parents, rented by Charlie Chaplin. It's like the serious artist, composer of 2-hour poetic albums, inheriting this piece of classic Hollywood glamour through her connection to a mainstream cultural figure.
They also have a place in New York, right?
Yeah.
West Village.
And amidst all this creative work and this high-profile life, they seem to have maintained a pretty stable family life. They had their first child, a daughter, in 2017.
And a second child was reported in 2023.
So this deep commitment to home life exists right alongside maintaining one of the most intellectually demanding and unique careers in contemporary music.
So if we tie this all back together, thinking about her overall impact, the critical recognition is undeniable and lasting, isn't it?
Absolutely. Looking back, NPR included 2 of her songs, Sapokanikan from Divers and the much earlier Peach Plum Pear from her first EP, in their big list of the 200 greatest songs by 21st century women, number 129 and number 80.
That's serious validation across her career.
It confirms her output isn't just seen as eccentric or niche anymore, it's canonical. Her whole path is defined by these incredible contradictions, isn't it?
Totally.
Coming from classical rigor and literary depth, enduring a physical vocal injury that forced an evolution, actively rejecting easy labels like freak folk.
Yet achieving mainstream recognition through these critically adored complex albums and through these really visible, often funny roles in Hollywood.
She manages to be intensely specific and deeply integrated all at once. Which brings us to the final thought for you, the listener, to really consider as you maybe go back and listen to her work. Think about how Joanna Newsom pulls this off. How does she maintain this intensely complex, literary, unique musical voice? Remember, she called polyrhythms wanky, and cited experimentalists like Henry Cow,
Right.
while simultaneously contributing key elements to mainstream comedy and film. What does that incredibly diverse yet deeply focused career tell us about what it means to be an enduring, serious artist in the 21st century?
Hmm.
Maybe it shows that high art ambition and surprising mainstream visibility aren't necessarily opposites. Perhaps by strategically engaging with the mainstream, but always on her own terms, she actually uses that visibility to reinforce and sustain her intensely unique, uncompromising artistic vision. It's quite remarkable when you lay it all out.